Okay, we're going to get started if everybody wants to take your seat. Thank you. My name is Julie Rhodes, and I'm a volunteer for Pet Friendly Services and happy to be here today. I've got a few announcements before I introduce our speaker. First, I want to let you know that towards the end of this session, these doors will start opening to get ready for lunch, but we ask that you remain seated until the Primo staff directs you to the buffet. So I'm sure everybody will be hungry and anxious, but we ask that you stay seated as they're starting to open the doors to prepare for lunch. The next thing I wanted to mention is that if you're a vet tech or here or a veterinarian and here to get your CEUs, you need to make sure that they have your name at the registration table so they can make sure they get those accounted for. Finally, I wanted to mention that all of the videos and presentations will be made available on the Pet Friendly Services website. So look for that, probably not tomorrow, but soon. And with that, I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. It's Trish McMillan with dog. She's going to be talking about dog euthanasia pathway planning. Trish holds a master's degree in animal behavior and is a certified professional dog trainer. With decades of experience in sheltering and rescue, including leadership roles with the ASPCA, she specializes in behavior and rehabilitation for dogs from complex situations. Trish is an author, speaker, and consultant known worldwide. And with that, I'd like to welcome Trish.
All right, I'm gonna have to wander around with this. I am a wanderer. Don't do well staying still, so we'll see how this goes. So thank you for coming to talk about one of the sadder parts of our job. I am one of the few people out there who will talk about this, and we're gonna kind of go through my journey. I started off as a volunteer. Who here is a volunteer? Woo! You guys make the world go round. I was also an apprentice dog trainer, so I don't know if you know about the Dunning-Kruger curve, but I really knew everything in about 1998, and I've been on a long, slow decline, realizing how little I know since then. So in 1998, I was pretty sure, well, 96 was when I started in sheltering. This is my 30-year anniversary of the first day I walked in, and I was waiting for the cake. So yeah, I was pretty sure I could save them all. As you do when you're a baby trainer, when you're a volunteer. I had read the books. There weren't TV shows yet, but I thought there was a lid for every pot. There was a home for every dog out there. They just needed the right training, probably from me. They needed the right foster home, probably from me. And I started off at a municipal animal control in Vancouver. I'm Canadian, and originally. And it had 30 kennels, and you could not take a dog out of the kennel. You had to just look at them and say, I will pay $50 and take this dog home. So I started off just asking who's next on the euthanasia list, and I would look at the dog through the kennel and say, well, buddy, want to come home with me? And I had a lot of success in those days. I do think dogs were easier in 1996. I know for sure our animal control officers euthanized anything that was trying to murder them through the bars. And I was able to help almost all the dogs that I took home. So I had a lot of confidence. I'm going to talk about some of the dogs who changed my mind about this kind of naive belief I had. And we'll talk about where I've landed today, 30 years in. I certainly know a lot less than I did in 1996, and you will find that you know less every year you do this. So find people who know more, download everything you can, use what's useful, throw away what's not, and go on. I run Shelter Behavior Hub, which is an educational website for people who work in the shelter behavior business. I do an mentorship for shelter dog people and one for shelter cat people. So the next dog one's onboarding in middle of May, and the cat one's onboarding in the middle of July. So if you want to go through the journey with me and turbocharge your programs, come and join the fun. So we're going to talk a little bit about terminology, then we'll go through all the different pathways there are, and then we'll talk about which behavior might warrant behavioral euthanasia in your shelter, and sort of my opinions. So in the late 90s, the term no-kill came to the forefront in sheltering. I was lucky enough to go down to San Francisco in 97 or 98 when Rich Avancino was there. And they were really turbocharging the idea of no-kill. They had a fantastic new shelter. I got to meet a lot of really influential people. Ended up moving to San Francisco in 1999, and I learned so much more. But I'll talk a little bit about my experiences before then as well as after. So the generally accepted version of no-kill is that 90% or more of your animals are released alive. So it has never meant, never not ever. There will always be animals coming in who are too sick, who are too dangerous to send out. And I think with a lot of the programs we've got going now, we're actually keeping more of these animals in their homes, which means the ones coming to our shelters, I am definitely seeing more difficult dogs medically and behaviorally than I did 30 years ago, which makes our job harder, because everybody thinks we can fix everything. So I call some of these shelters the never not ever. And I like to sort of think of behavioral euthanasia the same way I would medical euthanasia, because often there is a medical issue. Often the dogs have a physical problem of some sort. A great portion of these dogs have some sort of medical pain. A lot of them, I think, have chemical imbalances. I'll talk about one of those. And I'd like to sort of have you leave this talk realizing suffering is suffering. And behavioral suffering sometimes deserves a release from the pain as well. So I always think about this dog I saw at the ASPCA when I was there. I can still picture him, just a beautiful dark brindle pit bull. And he came in. He was seized by our officers because he had a huge lump on his shoulder. And we thought, oh, maybe he's been hit by a car, maybe he's been hit by a human. What is going on? And when they did the x-rays, they saw something like this. It was a big osteosarcoma. And that dog, every moment he was conscious, was screaming in agony. There was nobody here who would say, oh, just put him in the back, let him die naturally. We'll just let him continue suffering. But I see when I do shelter consults, I see dogs who are screaming in almost as much pain as that dog, but it's behavioral suffering. So I'd like us to start seeing suffering as suffering. And sometimes there's a live outcome pathway for these dogs. I was just in the foster talk. That is a great way to get a real bead on how these dogs are in homes. But there are also things that we can't fix, and believe me, I have tried. So one of the things I would like everybody to stop doing is to stop outsourcing this hardest part of our job to our adopters, to rescue groups, to members of the public. It's our job and it sucks, but if we have a dog we did euthanize that dog with osteosarcoma. As soon as we had the diagnosis, he didn't actually come out of anesthesia. They euthanized him on the table. It's also our job to euthanize promptly if it's a clear decision. But things have happened in the last 30 years. We're getting so much more pressure with the rise of social media, with the rise of dog trainers on TV who can fix everything in 23 minutes with commercial breaks. This dog who is snarling at the beginning, or shorter than that on TikTok, it looks like it's so easy. And we've all looked at these dogs in the face. We know how complicated behavior modification can be. We also have volunteers. The longer the dog stays with us, the more the volunteers get attached. I was that volunteer, I know. I know how exciting it is to be one of 3 people who can take Blondie out on a leash. And I wasn't going to take Blondie home. Good Lord, she was going to eat my dog, she was going to eat my neighbors, but I was one of a handful of people who could get her out of the kennel in 1999. So that made me feel really good about it. That made me think, well, there's somebody else who can take this dog home. And we get threats to lose funding. I mean, some of the euthanasia calls I made at the ASPCA absolutely led to threats or led to loss of funding. We had a little TV show going when I was there, and boy, oh boy, we were really careful not to let any of the ones who ended up with a behavioral euthanasia end up on TV, because you get a lot of pressure. So there are a lot of options, though. We have more and more of us have a behavior staff at our shelter. Who among us has a trainer or behavior person that we work with? A few of you? If not, it's a good position to fill. Send them to me, I'll get them trained up. A lot of people are starting to send our dogs out to a trainer. Do any of you do that? Do you have a trainer that takes dogs in and helps you? Got a few of those. 2 of my dogs were dogs that were sent to me by shelters for training. They were not adoptable, so I kept them, but I'm full now. I'm full, no more. Sometimes there are rescue groups that are home-based or foster-based, and many, many, many dogs do better in foster than they do in a home or in a kennel situation. Sometimes we want to adopt 2 people who will manage them forever. Yes, I do have 2 of these. They're getting better, but it's slow going, and I don't think they could fit into just any home, and I'm full. So for many dogs who don't fit any of these outcome pathways, euthanasia may be the humane choice. So I used to foster for these guys when I lived in Urbana. This is a really ethical breed rescue. I got into Dobermans in the 90s because I realized we were getting a lot of them in Vancouver in our shelter. And I realized we had about 4 days before these dogs went nuts in the kennel, because guess what? We are putting them into a Skinner box for reactivity. Person walks by, dog goes woof, person leaves. Has anybody ever seen agitation training for protection sports? That's what they do. They sneak up, dog goes woof. They're like, oh, see you. You walk by with the dog goes woof, woof. The other dog goes by. They don't know it's not their reactivity that's making them go by. So there are certainly dogs who deteriorate fast. So I started as soon as they came in, I would call up Doberman Rescue. I was using one in Bellingham at that time and say, this one's going up for adoption on Thursday. Can you be here Thursday morning at 9 to get them out of here? Or I will take them home to foster. And I've had a Doberman since 1999 because of this. But there are breeds who, a lot of the protection type breeds do not do well in these Skinner boxes we create in shelters. They do better in a home foster where they can bond to somebody, where you can see, oh, this one loves cats, this one's great with my dogs, this one's perfectly house trained. And many of them focus on people who know the breed. So if you see a dog starting to deteriorate on their stray hold, don't wait till they are at day 7 or day 3 or whatever your stray hold is in your area. Contact the rescues right away. But check with the breed rescues. Is it just somebody who saw on Instagram, Presa Canario, they're cool looking dogs, I'm going to start a breed rescue? Or are they somebody who's had these dogs their whole life, who's maybe bred them, maybe shown them, maybe worked them in protection sports? Make sure your breed rescues know the breed. But they do mostly have sort of a pool of fosters to pull from who can help them really assess these dogs at a home. I also want to know that the rescue will euthanize the dog if their behavior is dangerous. And Illinois Doberman Rescue is absolutely one of those rescues. They have very low tolerance for aggression, which is why I've gotten 2 dogs and fostered many for them when I lived a little closer. And I would travel to adopt from them again if I found myself between Dobermans again. So here's a story of a less responsible rescue, and this is kind of something I'm seeing a little too often. Not as extreme as this guy, But this is a bully mix who came into a shelter. And they have a Facebook group that's associated with them that's trying to get everybody out. This is a shelter that I worked with. I helped them develop their adoptability criteria, but they have backslid. And they need to take a look at that piece of paper again and update it and really follow what it says. But he came in with a bite to a child. So for me, that is a euthanasia. That is not a send to rescue. That is not a make a plea for him. And the person who wrote the profile on the group, who was not with the shelter, blamed the child. Well, the child was screaming. The child made a high-pitched noise and slammed a door in the dog's face. Of course he bit her. I don't know. High-pitched noises happen at my place all the time. I have 5 dogs. You are not at risk of getting bitten if you scream at my dogs or if you stub your toe and yell. There was a lot of blame for the relinquishers, like giving up on this dog just for merely biting their child. So the choice was made to send him to a rescue. And look how cute he is, a beautiful looking dog. In the next 5 months, or the next 6 months, he was transferred through 5 rescues who all got to count him as a live release because he was live when he left them. He ended up with these 2 rehab trainers who clearly have some influence from the TV trainers. And they slapped a shock collar on him, kept him in a crate, brought him out and worked him, put him back in the crate. He was adopted once to a woman who brought him back the next day because of some very scary behavior towards, I think it was their son or her nephew. And he was adopted a second time to a woman. They were told, do not take this collar off him when he's out of the crate. And one of the reasons I don't use electronics in training dogs from shelters for the public, nobody wants to leave that thing on him. As soon as he got home, they took it off him. The mom was out in the backyard working on her garden, and she hears high-pitched screaming from the house. The collar is off the dog. She goes in, and the dog is in the process of killing her mother. And you can look up the story if you look up Blue and Virginia Beach. This was a few years ago. The rescue was sued for $5 million. I imagine the high-pitched noises were perhaps a trigger, but we already knew this about this dog. And as somebody who loves pit bulls, who had the best pit bull in the world for a decade, he was an amazing advocate for shelter dogs, for fight bus dogs. This does not help me. This does not help me get insurance. This does not help me when I'm out in the street walking my dogs. And the dog was not adoptable on day 1, and he went through many months of not ideal training to end up euthanized anyways. So sometimes foster and rescue is the right thing to do. This is a white Doberman. They should not exist. I fostered him. He was a medical nightmare, but a behavioral angel. And sometimes a short-term foster will give you the information you need. I'm assuming a lot of you were just at that great session next door on fostering, and if you're not doing it yet, do it. But if you've got a behaviorally challenged dog and you're sending them to a foster-based rescue, just ask them, do you have a trainer you work with? Do you have expertise in working with this type of behavior problem? We know from the research that most dogs, many if not most dogs, will do better outside of the shelter. But some of these rescues are actually hoarders in disguise. So if you are sending dogs out to foster, sending them out to rescue groups, sending them out to breed rescue, go visit these places. Go in person. Don't ship them 2 days to a place in northern Wisconsin that says they take this type of dog. I have a farm with 3.5 acres. I have 36 animals now. Most of them are chickens. I'm not a hoarder, I swear. But I also have Alzheimer's in my family. If I get a little closer to the kind of behavior my aunt was showing before she died, even though my farm is a delightful place now, everybody's spoiled, stinking, rotten, fed, dewormed, all the stuff. 10 years from now, it may not be the same. 20 years from now, who knows? So check every year, make sure that they're still the same rescue you started with. And I just looked up rescue hoarding randomly on Google and got these pictures. I don't know anything about this case, but this is an example. When I was with the ASPCA, some of the most appalling things I saw were rescues that had gone bad or sanctuaries that had gone bad. And sometimes the way you fund the sanctuary is everybody who comes in gives us a dowry. And if that is how you're running it, the only solution is to have more animals every year. So these urine-soaked crates are probably not any better than your shelter kennel. And there were 66 dogs in one home that were seized. So I get it. I could be that person too. I am a couple of brain cells away from having 66 dogs in cages in my... I would hope I would see that, but that's not how hoarding works. People can be very blind to the suffering in front of them. So check your rescues. Do they get enrichment? Do they get out of their cages? Do they get good medical care? This is one of the dogs from that cage after it was groomed and rescued from the rescuer. Find out if they actually adopt dogs out. Look at their adoption page. If they're wanting 16 references and a vet reference and you need a fenced yard and you need to put your driver's license and your full income, maybe they're not actually adopting them out. Maybe they're keeping them. So recheck. This is a sanctuary that I worked with in Ohio when I was with the ASPCA. The guy had 3 hog barns full of dogs. There were 379 living dogs seized from that property. There were a lot of dead dogs found there too. And he'd just feed them every 2 or 3 days. Volunteers were never allowed. It was always under construction. And he would just add more shavings or straw as the poop built up. There were dead rats in the water. It was appalling. And he was pulling dogs from the euthanasia list. How happy would you be if somebody showed up at your shelter and said, I will take all the dogs on your euthanasia list for my sanctuary? He would think he was a hero. The people in his area thought he was a really good salesman of his, but he was just letting the dogs breed in the kennels and selling the puppies. And I assessed a lot of these dogs when I was with the A, and a lot of them really did need to be euthanized. There were some scary dogs in that group. So I see a lot of, I do a little secret shopping when I am called to do a shelter consult. And I sort of look at what percentage of your dogs that you have up for adoptions are no dogs, no cats, no kids, other situations. When I see that, I have other dogs. I'm not your unicorn home. I have cats. I'm not your unicorn home. I don't have kids, but my neighbor has grandkids who just walk in my front gate to go pet the ponies. They're not in danger from any of my animals. But if you have a dog who's going to bite them, I'm a professional trainer, but I'm not taking that dog home. So one of the questions I ask, and shelters do call me when they have a questionable dog that they want to run by me, that's a service you can book if you're unsure. One of the questions I ask is, do you want this dog? Would you take it home? And if your answer is no, you're asking somebody else to do that. Do you want to live next door to this dog, even if that neighbor doesn't have dogs or cats or kids? I have a neighbor who has a really aggressive bloodhound that she was letting run the neighborhood. He would come and fence fight with my dogs. I finally got her to pen him up, but it took some doing. And do I love living next door to that dog? No, he's not fun. He's not dog friendly. Sometimes we think, he just needs a farm home. And certainly my 2 very fearful dogs do great on my farm. Nobody visits the farm who doesn't know dogs. If I tell my friends, do not make eye contact, they're good at not making eye contact. But I can't take a dog who's going to kill my chickens. I can't take a dog who's going to injure my dogs or cats. I can't take a dog who chases horses. I can't even take your dogs who want to bite children because aforementioned neighbor and grandkids. So actually, since I've been living on the farm, I have to have easier dogs than I did when I lived in an apartment because I got people delivering hay. I had a guy working on building a shed for my firewood yesterday while I was here. I have people coming and going all the time. It's actually busier than living in a city. And adopters aren't really looking for a project. People are coming to you to get a pet that they can do things with. They don't want to become professional trainers, although that's how a lot of us became professional trainers, right? So sometimes the original owners just can't meet a dog's needs. So this is Iris. This is my current Doberman. And she was rehomed by her elderly owners for an appropriate reason. There is no way somebody without a farm and 4 other dogs and a love of agility and rally obedience and hiking in the forest, there's no way a normal person could meet this dog's needs. I've had Doberman since the 90s. She is off the charts, the most active, hyperactive Doberman that I've had. That's her biting the hose. You can see a little bit of the water coming in, and that is her life. She is vertical, she is here. She loves to punch people in the face with her face. Not an appropriate dog for an elderly couple in Tampa who had to leash walk her everywhere. So they did the right thing taking her to the shelter, and the shelter did the right thing looking for somebody with Doberman experience, because I think she could have punched a lot of the wrong faces with her face in any home and ended up back at the shelter. But she's awesome. She just turned 5. So if the dog is just fearful of kids, I do have 2 dogs. Amazingly, she's great with kids. But my 2 fearful dogs absolutely could not go to a home with kids. If I keel over dead tomorrow, my executor would know not to send these dogs to a home where there's a lot of running and jumping. Are they dangerous when the neighbor's kids come over? Not at all. They retreat, but they would not want to live with that. Maybe the dog just doesn't get along with one animal in the home. Maybe they're a cat chaser. Maybe the old grumpy dog is not their best friend, but they get along with other ones. Those are dogs where it's appropriate to find them a new home. This is another one was showing normal behavior. There's my perfect pit bull, who is helping this little guy learn how to be a dog. And this puppy was sold by the breeder to a 90-year-old man at 5 weeks of age. Imagine that. He bounced through the shelter pretty quickly. These guys are teeth on legs. Then he was sent out to a home with little fast-moving kids at 5 or 6 weeks of age. I guess he was 6 weeks when he came to the shelter. Promptly returned from that one. And I just went and scooped him up. I'm like, he needs some training, he needs some manners, he needs a home with other dogs to teach him how to dogs, because he was weaned too young. And after a couple of months of training and learning how to be a dog and just growing up, he became this amazing little guy. And he belongs to a local woman who does agility with him now. He's got a great home. So he was biting people, but very breed-typical cattle dog / puppy behavior. So a bite is not a bite is not a bite. So if somebody comes in and says, oh, this dog nipped my child, maybe it was possum. Maybe they were running fast. Maybe he got an ankle. Or maybe it was blue. Maybe that child had to go to the hospital. Maybe that child needed stitches. So one thing about humans these days is they all tend to come with one of these in their pockets. And I bet they have pictures of that bite. So get a picture. Attach that to the dog's file if you decide to take them in. Here's Possum, he's a puppy. Here's the scrape he gave to the child. Almost everybody takes pictures of bites. Use a validated scale to give it a number. There's the Kara-Shannon scale. There's the Ian Dunbar scale. Kara-Shannon has one for dog-to-dog bites. Don't use the Dunbar scale for that. And find out what the triggers are. Is this a dog who only bites over bully sticks? Everything else in the world, including roadkill, he doesn't care about, but bully sticks, he's going to bite you. He can probably go the rest of his life without seeing a bully stick, but if he guards bully sticks and his food bowl and your couch and the piece of Kleenex he found and the leaf he picked up, I've had clients try to live with dogs like this. It's really hard. A lot of resource guarding can be worked with, but people aren't signing up for universal resource guarders. So I really think that we should have written criteria, and this is a document that we develop in my mentorships. We do one in the dog mentorship for dog behavioral euthanasia and one for cats. And I've never done 2 exactly the same because your resources are all different. Some of you have a trainer you work with, some of you don't. Some of you have very knowledgeable people in your community. Some of you live in the country like I do, where there's very little tolerance for any type of aggression. So we sort of look at what people in your area can handle and build the policies around these. And having written policy is a game changer. When I started at the ASPCA, they did not have any written policy. And it's not that there's never going to be gray area, but if you have written it down, it's going to move from this wide down to this wide. So some of mine, I think, one of the questions I ask is what happens if the leash breaks? If that is going to result, like all 5 of my dogs have been loose in the driveway in the last week. Somebody left the gate open and nobody got bit. And there was a little bit of chasing of bunnies and then they came back and nobody got hurt. But if the answer is they're going to go next door, grab the neighbor's dog and kill them, I can't even tell you I've had 100% compliance on my gates and my leashes. I think these universal resource guarders are a little too much for most people. This is my friend's bathroom. After her dog with extreme separation anxiety got in there and he tore himself up, taking the drywall and the mirror off. I do think there's a level of fear and anxiety. The 2 fearful dogs I have, I would have recommended euthanasia for if they'd gone back to the shelter because they were really extreme. One of them I've had for 1.5 years and I still can't get a leash on her. And I know what I'm doing. So I do think there's levels of arousal, especially if it's with redirection. So how can we fix dogs? What can we fix in a shelter? And I'm sad to say that 30 years in, I'm less optimistic about shelter rehab. I used to think, well, I take them out for 20 minutes a day and I'll fix this problem, but I'm putting them back into a situation. If you don't have good enrichment, if you don't have, if you're not meeting all the ASV guidelines for meeting your dog's needs, you have no business trying to do behavior modification. You should have notes, you should have concrete goals, you need to monitor the progress. I do think there's things you can work with, especially if there are other, if you use other dogs to help, which I'm going to be talking about after lunch. And use fosters. You can learn so much from a foster. So how do we plan a pathway? We've got this guy in the shelter and this is how he's behaving. They told me I don't have volume on this, so I'll let you guys do the barking and growling for me. So, we've all seen this. I know nothing more about this dog. Somebody just sent me this video, but I can tell you at my shelter he would be immediately off the adoption floor. We've all seen people leave in tears after one of these dogs hits the bars at face level and with their kid walking by. And the folks who want that maybe aren't the right people for this particular, it looks like a Cane Corso. So what pathways do we have for him? He's terrible in the kennel, so have all of my Dobermans been, but that doesn't necessarily mean straight to euthanasia. We need to gather more information. We need to look at what pathways are available for him. And a lot of us here will say, well, I've got a dog like that at home. He would definitely bite a man if he came in, but I live with him. So everybody else needs to do this too? Well, I won't do it again. I do have challenging dogs. This is my feral dog. She's 2 now, still pretty feral, but I will not take on any more like her. I am full up, and the bar has to be different for dogs who are unowned. If that same shelter called me with her sister showing the same behavior now, I'd be like, I can tell you, 1.5 years in, this is like Groundhog Day every day with this dog. She's like, who are you? Don't touch me. I'll be out here playing with your Pyrenees. We can't put burdens on people who they didn't want to be trained. If she was my only dog, not only would she not have the support of her dog friends, who I think give her a good quality of life, but I can't take her to the vet. I had to have an in-home vet come and do her shots. I could not take her. She still hasn't ever been in my car. So there's a lot of, the bar is different, and I wouldn't wish this upon anybody. I love her. She's with me for as long as she has, but I would not make somebody else go through this. It's a burden. It's a real burden having a dog that you can't touch. or having a dog that bites men, or having a dog that wants to kill other dogs. And I don't think we should put this burden on the member of the public. So here's an intake. This is the damage done by Lulu, who I will talk to you about later. I got some good pictures. She almost went through the ear of my little dog. So you get the pictures of the damage, use your bite scale, know what your community's tolerance level is, know about provoked versus unprovoked. I do have a vet friend who was bitten quite badly with a dog who was coming out of anesthesia and just flailing, and she put her hand in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's not a dangerous dog. I might punch someone coming out of anesthesia. I don't know. I've never punched anyone before. But if the dog comes in with this kind of damage to another dog, maybe the pathway you should be shifting them to is an owner-requested euthanasia rather than an intake, and we'll just find her a home with no other dogs. That once we knew that was the level of damage she did, Lulu was euthanized. In the shelter, you can find out a lot just by doing play groups. I have spent thousands of hours in dark back rooms with a rubber hand, poking dogs and doing all of the terrible things you can do to them in one day. And the latest research on these one-point-in-time assessments seems to indicate that's not really a great way to get to know our dogs. The ASPCA on their deployments is mostly using play groups to help other dogs. So that pit bull I showed you, I got from my last deployment with the ASPCA. And the reason I picked him was because he was a playgroup rock star. You could put him with anybody. If he was with a shy dog, he'd bring him out of their shell. If he was with a party dog, he would party. If a dog became aggressive, he would just look away, which is very weird for a dog from a dog fighting background, but he was just that unicorn. And he got to be an ambassador with me. So the modern way, rather than making a dog go through their one no good, really bad day all at once, is to get input from many different sources. So those short-term fosters are one of the best places you can get information, find out, oh, he rode great in the car, he really wanted to meet the other dogs, he saw a bird and was just curious. Get that information. Taking them out for hikes. We're in rural North Carolina, not a lot of places to go, but lots of great hiking trails. Every time I see someone on a hike with no dog, I think, this is a lost opportunity. You need a dog. We want to make sure we have policies that get the dogs out quickly. We don't want to have really restrictive adoption policies or have people sign over their firstborn child. I did a shelter tour last week, just as a spectator, not as me, and I asked them, so if I wanted to adopt this dog, I would have to bring all 5 of my dogs in to meet her? And they're like, yes, of course, we must do meet and greets. So the one that I've never put a leash on, I need to corner her, grab her, get peed and pooped on, put her in the car, drive her to your shelter, take her out of the crate full of pee and poop, and put her in a field when I know she has loved every dog she's ever met for her entire life. Like, have some flexibility, and get them out quicker. If the pathway is unclear, often what you need is more information. He seems terrible on leash, never had him in playgroup. Maybe we can muzzle him and put him in playgroup. Maybe we can try to find an opposite sex dog who is his friend and get him integrated with other dogs. Maybe he is like Lulu and he is going to do damage. We need to figure that out. That's our job. That's not the job of the local dog park. And I can tell you after many years of playgroups that your most reactive on-leash dog may be your rock star in playgroup. They're often just like this because they really, really want to play. And I do have a course on my website called Dog Introductions with Lori Lawless that if you're nervous about doing introductions, there's a lot of good techniques in there. So dog information we may be able to get in the shelter. Dog kid information we may be able to get in the shelter. We had a vet who had a baby every 2 years, and she would bring me whatever size of child I needed to walk past my dog in a kennel, safely restrained. They'd be like, he's smiling at me, Mommy. Probably traumatize those kids for life. But sometimes there are ways to get the information we need in the shelter. Often we need to get them out of the shelter. When I was in New York City, they conveniently kept all the kids in wrought iron playgrounds with big, thick bars, so I could walk by kids who were actually running and playing in an outside situation if I was suspicious. But you can often find things out with overnights, with fosters. I've talked about all of this. If you know your cost of care per day, I would suggest it might be cheaper to hire a trainer for a week to take the dog into their home. Putting them in another kennel may not give you the answers you need, but if you've got a local trainer who like me, takes dogs into their home, you might get that information. And getting it sooner is better. And often trainers are okay with a euthanasia recommendation if they get the dog home and they can't handle them either. You always need to keep the public safe, though. Use muzzles, gates, wrought iron playgrounds, whatever you have. So this is Lulu. I was delighted that after being fostered for a little while with me, despite being a little grumpy with dogs, my magic pit bull was able to get her playing. It was short-lived, but that was one of the great moments with Lulu, and that was where I started thinking, oh, maybe we don't need an only dog home. Maybe with an appropriate male dog, she'll be okay. I'm here to tell you, you don't need a blood donor. We did end up keeping her until my little dog got chewed up. And if that is on your criteria list, you are saying somebody in my staff, one of you, is going to have to get bitten by this dog before I'll make a decision. I think we can suss out offensive aggression without anyone getting bitten. That's what we do. We keep dogs in our shelters who, I met a dog who had killed a woman. Like, he did not kill me. He was just being held. But keeping them in solitary confinement is torture. It's not great for dogs. So this was Lulu's first adoption. The little dachshund would not eat with her in the home, so she came back pretty quickly. This was before the dog aggression started. But what can our adopters handle? This woman could not handle a dog who made her little dog nervous. She brought her back. But can we her next adopter just had a bum knee, and he needed some help walking her, so I provided her with a head halter. I provided her with some no-pull devices so that he could walk her. But if management alone, just keep her away from all other dogs, is your solution, we can't do that. I can't do that. I have had management fail at my house. And if the cost is the picture I showed you, I don't think this is a dog we should be adopting out. We also need to think about caregiver burden. There's some good research out there now on people living with behaviorally difficult dogs. And Dr. Kelly Ballantyne did this one. The title's at the bottom. You will get the slides afterwards. And she found that almost 70% of owners with dogs with significant behavior challenge showed caregiver burden. This is like living with a relative with Alzheimer's, living with a profoundly disabled child. It's similar. You can't just go on vacation. You can't just get any old pet sitter. You can't just choose to go to the beach for the day. We have to work everything around a behavior problem of a dog, and I've been there. I've had those dogs too. So, and 26% had scores consistent with severe caregiver burden. And think about what we're doing to our public when we send out a really difficult dog. We get to have our cake and party at the shelter, but if you're not doing follow-up on them, you may not know what a burden they are becoming. And as somebody who does behavior consulting as well, I'm kind of on both sides of the table, talking to the shelter people and talking to the mom with the bitten child. So when I had my first behavioral euthanasia, I thought, we have to try everything before we can make this decision. And I am here to tell you 30 years in, there's no such thing as trying everything. There will always be one more medication, one more BMOD plan, one more trainer, one more. There is no such thing as trying everything. You only need to try what is reasonable for you. And having those policies is really big in making decisions promptly when it's obvious. And feel free to tag in experts. There are lots of vet behaviorists, there are trainers, there are lots of people you can tag in to give you a second opinion. So in my opinion, we should not be trying to fix offensive aggression towards people, especially if there's already been damage. We don't have to wait for the blood donor. But if the answer is to what happens if the leash breaks, is this dog is going to close distance and put their teeth into somebody, we should not be sending those dogs out. Same if the answer is they're going to go and get a dog. This is Rosie. I've written about her. And she was one of those dogs. She did break her leash and do some damage to a dog. I'll tell her story. And I do think there are types of fear and anxiety, separation anxiety. I think there's a level. Those ones are harder for me. Like I said, I've got 2 fearful dogs at home. But I do think there's a level that we shouldn't be inflicting on our adopters. So this is a dog who really changed my mind. I took Chinook in 1997 with his litter and his mom. And I thought, what a great thing for an apprentice trainer to raise a litter of puppies. I still believe that. But I thought, if they're raised right, they're going to be fine. He was the product of a sibling breeding of feral parents who lived in a basement. The neighbors hadn't seen them outside since they were puppies. And they were heavily parasitized. They had no fur from the shoulders back from flea allergies, from chewing off all their hair. They were emaciated. They were just skeletons. The male was euthanized promptly because he was pooping himself and climbing the walls when people walked by. The female they held on to see if, because she would take treats from us after a few days. We're like, well, let's hold on to her and see if we can make a case against these people. And then she got wider, and she got wider. And this is the litter I chose to take home. And I have been really cautious for the rest of my career about pregnant bitches who come in the kind of condition she was in, because those puppies did not get what they needed. For the first month of her pregnancy, she was in that basement full of parasites, hardly being fed. For the second month of her pregnancy, she was in a shelter, stressed beyond belief. And not one of those puppies was normal. They had issues from extreme sort of explosive aggression to separation anxiety to predatory behavior. Mom and Dad weren't normal. They didn't get what they needed in utero. So despite the fact that after they were born, they got early neurological stimulation, they got training, they got puppy classes, they got taken lots of places, they were not normal. And I kept this one. He was growling at me at 3 weeks of age, doing normal puppy handling. He got really fearful of strangers. And he started sort of, it was almost like he heard voices. He would his eyes would glaze over and he'd just attack what was in front of him. So if you've seen my defensive handling videos, he's the one who gave me the reflexes I have, because he did attack me and the boyfriend I had at the time for most of the 18 months of his life. And on his last day, he had me trapped in one room, my boyfriend trapped in another room. And we already had an overdose of sedation from the previous euthanasia appointment that we canceled. And his last day was not a good one. My last memories of this dog were not good ones. And on the flip side, when people talk about it's all how they're raised, this dog was raised by one of the worst dog fighters the ASPCA has ever arrested. He was raised on a chain until he was 8 months old, just far enough away from other dogs that he couldn't play with them. He was definitely from dog-aggressive genetics. This guy did not keep dogs who couldn't fight. He spent 8 months in a 5-foot by 5-foot shelter cage covered in poop. And I brought him home, and he just fit in like he'd always been there. He was high energy, he was high arousal, but he loved all people, he loved all dogs. He even let the chicken walk on him. This is him meeting a kid for the first time. So when you say it's all how you raised them, you are negating the Theodores of the world too, as well as the Chinooks of the world, who were maybe raised just fine, but definitely the chemistry was not right in his head. So behavior is very situational. This is Lulu with a kid. She was wonderful with humans, which is often the case with dog-aggressive dogs. If we only had 2 piles of dogs to make decisions on in our shelters, we had the pile where they're 100% friendly 100% of the time with everything. and the ones who are 100% aggressive with everything 100% of the time, we would not need this talk. It would be super easy, but behavior is situational, and we need to think about the situations that animal's going to be in. And especially with dog aggression, it may start at sexual maturity or at social maturity. So when I chose to euthanize Lulu, my pit bull had tens of thousands of Facebook friends, mostly pit bull lovers, mostly kind of where I was 30 years ago, thinking they could all be saved. And we had talked about our fosters. We'd adopted out lots of dogs. She was the first behavioral euthanasia I had when I had him. And she got in a fight with my small dog in the kitchen. The dog just walked past her. She grabbed her, was shaking and trying to kill her. I had a trainer friend over. I had a brake stick in the car. I saw the level of fight, ran out and got my brake stick. And we were able to get them apart with only $800 worth of damage to my small dog. But if that had been an adopter without a trainer, if it had been me alone, I don't know how easy it would have been to break it up. So when I decided to euthanize her, my trainer friend was just like, disappear her from the page, don't even talk about it. Like, they're gonna want adoption photos. Like, I'm not gonna lie to people. So I told the world via my pit bull's Facebook page that Lulu was no longer with us. And I've got a pretty tough shell, but I got called some new things with Lulu. I got some new comments. How dare you? I have 3 pit bulls that I have to crate and rotate. So, I'm like, delete, block, delete, block, delete, block. I don't care. My friend Sue Alexander sends me a note. She says, we need a place to talk about this. I'm like, yeah, I need a pink pony. That's great. Then Sue sends me a link that says, losing Lulu. 1 member, Sue Alexander. I'm like, 2 members, Sue and Trish. And it now has close to 40,000 members. You guys are all welcome. Tell them you saw me. They're having a summit tomorrow. My talk is pre-recorded, so if you want to hear Lulu's whole story. And it's a place for us to talk about, for us to grieve. It's only post-adoption grief support. Don't send people there who are trying to make the decision. So, if we decide to go to placement, sometimes we want to make restrictions. Yeah. I think I've talked enough about this. Only pet homes are not the solution. No kid homes are not the solution. If you've said no kids under 13 and they bite the neighbor's 12-year-old, you may be in some issue. And if this is the cost of management failure, we shouldn't be sending them to management only. So I do think when we talk to volunteers and staff, we should be open and we should communicate with them. It should be an opt-in, opt-out situation. They should not have to all get the same email. They should, we used to put it behind a piece of paper so people could choose to look if there were euthanasias, and we had the medical and behavioral ones on the same sheet. But if you have policies, if you communicate about it, they will see, oh, we don't adopt out dogs who are going to injure or kill other people's dogs. And when we see that behavior is happening, we don't put people through that. I think we need to have some good rituals. We need to give people ways to remember the dogs who have left. So there's really no right or wrong. There's always going to be gray area. Do I have until 12:15, or do I have to? Oh, okay, I thought I had the hour to talk. You're welcome to come and bug me at lunch, too, if I don't get to your question. But I think a lot of our problems we can't fix in a shelter. I think warehousing the dog forever is never the solution. Life in a cage is a sad, sad thing for dogs. So because we're doing a better job keeping more of our dogs in homes with good outreach, we need to start seeing perhaps a rising behavioral euthanasia in our shelters as a symptom of success rather than failure. So let's keep our dogs where they're already loved. Let's offer good post-adoption support, tag in your trainers, offer classes, and help the dogs stay where they are already loved. So I would love for the words no kill to leave the lexicon. I don't think that helps anybody. It pits us against one another. There is not a rescue or a sanctuary for all of the dogs. and not all dogs are pets. Just outsourcing our euthanasia to the public is never the ethical solution. So I suspect that a lot of these Lulus are born that way, just like Chinook was. Don't be blaming your adopters. They're not all abused. Many abused animals are going to be just fine. So that is me. If you would like to contact me or see my courses, come bug me on lunch if I don't get to your question now. But what questions do you guys have now? I'm supposed to take you the mic. Oh, good, you're close.
I'm going to try to do this without emotion. But first, I'm Terry Holzheimer, for those of you that don't know. I run Great Babies Rescue. We are a last chance special needs rescue. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for speaking to these folks, things that they truly need to hear. I have an adopter in this room, and I'm sure she's probably going to be a little shocked by my next statement. She's been around and she's watched me for a long time. When I went into this, we can save them all. We can, folks. But the best gift we can give is freedom for those that are broken. For your volunteers, your shelter staff. When you've got one that you want to save so bad, step back and look and ask yourself, because this has been a hard question for me in 30 years. Is the best gift freedom? Just like the dog that she had that was born to the feral parents. I had a boy that come in that way. He came to me drugged after a sheriff's department was going to shoot him en route because he woke up from the sedation. He lived with me till he passed away. Today, I could tell you, I would have set him free. I've had reconstructive surgery 3 times. 2 of those dogs are still alive. One of them I set free because every time he saw me, like her little feral girl, I was a stranger. Euthanasia, as bad as it is, and my team is probably would lose it if they heard me say this. It's not a death sentence. There's a lot of times it's a gift from the man above or whoever we believe in, because freedom from pain is freedom. Thank you for your honesty.
Pain is pain. I agree with you. And really, we have the ability to release these behaviorally tormented dogs from pain, just as we do if it's cancer. And I hope people can start seeing psychological pain as pain. Thank you for your honesty. Anyone else? Got 3 minutes.
It may be kind of hard to answer, but if a dog has like a one-time attack that is really bad, is that enough, or do you always give them another chance? That might be really complicated to answer.
Yeah, I mean, this is where having policy is a good idea. I would look at the situations. Were they coming out of anesthesia and flailing around? Were they being picked up from the side of the road and bones were grinding together? But with Lulu, she was in and out of our rescues foster program for 9 months. She was adopted twice. She did not do damage until her last day of life. But once I saw she was capable of that kind of damage, that I don't think I could have broken up by myself, I was not inflicting that dog on a civilian. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And once you have knowledge, it's I have grave ethical concerns about sending that out and crossing your fingers. And so if it's a situation that's never going to happen again, hopefully you won't ever get hit by a car and have bones grinding together. And if there's no reason for it, well, I mean, if the reason for it is a kid walking by and they broke the leash, approached the kid, grabbed and shook, and the kid went to the hospital for 60 stitches, I've got my answer. If we know what they're capable of, it doesn't matter if it was provoked because the kid was screaming. But I am happy to tag in. You can go to trishmcmillan.com and book a session with me, and I will go through a proper history taking if you have specific dogs, or if you want to put together policies around it, which is really the key to communicating with your staff, with your volunteers. These are our policies. Nobody would look at my template and go, "Oh, we should be sending out dogs who want to injure or kill other dogs." They'll be like, "Well, yeah, obviously." So priming them with the policy is important. And I think we're at time.
Let's give a round of applause for Tricia. Also, a couple of things. Again, if you guys can remain seated while they open up these doors, and they will let you know when they're ready to direct you to the buffet. And also wanted to remind you all to fill out your evaluation form. I think that's really important for folks to be able to get that feedback on what you liked, what we could have done better, and so on and so forth. So thank you all, and we'll be serving lunch real soon.